Narrator, listen. Beyond the clamor of bolter-fire, beyond the soaring hymns of the Ministorum, beyond the silent scream of the void, there is another sound. It is the true anthem of the Imperium of man. It is the unending rhythmic percussion of industry, the grinding dirge of gears that turn for 10,000 years, fueled by blood and oil and the slow, inexorable decay of hope. It is the sound of purpose stripped of all passion, the sound of existence devoid of life. It is the echo of the machine, and within it the ghost of a voice that can no longer speak. The image slowly fades in not to a grand vista, but to a close-up of a single massive cog turning with ponderous, irresistible force. It is slick with grime and fluid. The camera pans out, revealing that this cog is one of thousands, a universe of interlocking iron teeth that form the wall of a manufactorum cathedral. The scale is oppressive, inhuman. Far below, lost in the shadows, and the rising steam figures move. Narrator, we are in the underhive of Galthus Prime, but we could be anywhere. On a forge world orbiting a dying star within the ammunition factories of Armageddon, or in the scriptoriums of Holy Terror itself. The architecture changes, but the function remains brutally, beautifully the same: to produce, to supply, to feed the ravenous war machine that is mankind's only shield against the dark. Here in these canyons of pitted iron and sanctified steel, the true work of the Imperium is done. Not by heroes, not by saints, but by the damned. The view descends into the cavernous workspace. The air is thick with the exhalations of promethium furnaces, the acrid tang of ozone from arcing machinery, and the faint coppery scent of blood. Thousands upon thousands of figures toil in the gloom, illuminated by the harsh, pulsing glow of plasma conduits. They are servitors. Narrator, behold the workforce, a silent tide of flesh and steel, their movements, a hypnotic ballet of damnation. See how this one, its arms replaced with multi-jointed hydraulic claws, lifts a white-hot ingot from the furnace, its skin blistering from the proximity, a sensation its brain is no longer permitted to register as pain. Watch that one, its torso fused to a mobile conveyor belt sorting spent shell casings with a speed no unaltered hand could match. Its eyes now optical lenses glowing with cold analytical light. They move with a precision that is terrifying, a unity of purpose that is absolute. There is no wasted motion, no hesitation, no complaint. There is only the task, the endless repeating cycle of the task. These are the servitors, and they are not machines, not truly. To mistake them for mere automata is to misunderstand the fundamental cruel pragmatism that underpins the galaxy's greatest empire. In the cold, hard calculus of the Imperium, humanity is a resource, a crop to be harvested. Billions are fed into the meat grinder of the Astra Militarum. Billions more dedicate their lives to the rote prayer and bureaucracy that holds the fragile edifice together. But for some, their utility is not in their mind, their faith, or their fighting spirit. It is in the raw material of their bodies. The flesh, the bone, the nervous system, a biological chassis waiting to be repurposed. The camera moves slowly through the ranks of the laboring servitors, a close-up on a face half obscured by a rebreather mask. The eyes are dull, vacant pupils, dilated. A thin line of drool escapes from the corner of a mouth that has not spoken a word in 50 years. Narrator, to the teeming, unwashed masses of the Imperium, this is the final fear. Not the Xenos whose existence is a distant horror, not the heretic whose damnation is a matter of faith, but this, the clanking gait of a lobotomized enforcer on the street corner, the vacant stare of the Medicus Servitor in the charnel house clinics. This is the spectre that haunts the dreams of every factorum worker, every hive scum, every soul who has ever strayed from the narrow path of imperial compliance. Death is a release, a final prayer to the God Emperor. But to become a servitor, that is to be denied even the dignity of an end. It is to have your very being, your name, your memories, your love, your hate, all of it scraped away, leaving only a vessel of meat to be piloted by binary code. It is a judgment rendered not in spirit, but in the flesh itself. A sentence of undeath served in perpetual silent slavery. The focus shifts to a new servitor, its metallic implants still gleaming under the grime. It performs its task flawlessly, yet there is a subtle, almost imperceptible tremor in its hand, a ghost of a hesitation before it clamps a rivet into place. A neural misfire, nothing more. Or is it, narrator? But what is a soul? Theologians of the ecclesiarchy would say it is the Emperor's divine spark. The tech priests of Mars would call it a flawed and unpredictable ghost in the organic machine. But for the man or woman who becomes this thing, it was everything. It was the warmth of a sun on their face, the taste of their first ration bar, the memory of a mother's touch, the sting of a betrayal. When the mind is scrubbed, when the personality is erased with acid scalpel and hypno-indoctrination, does anything of that soul remain? Is there a flicker in the void, a silent scream trapped within the prison of the skull? Can a machine dream of a life it was forced to forget? This is the story of that damnation, the chronicle of the journey from person to tool. We will descend into the abattoirs of imperial justice, witness the unholy surgery that dissects a mind, and walk through the myriad hells crafted for these mindless servants. We will ask the forbidden question: when you hollow out a human being and fill it with programming, what, if anything, is left behind? The answer lies here in the rhythmic, unending, soul-crushing echo of the machine. Narrator. The unceasing hunger for these wretched souls, these biological components, is a foundational pillar of the Imperium, a demand that must be met by a constant, reliable supply. But where does one harvest the raw material for such a grim industry? The sources are as varied as they are pitiless, flowing like crimson rivers into the great grinding mills of the Adeptus Mechanicus. The journey from human to servitor begins not on the operating slab, but with the stroke of a pen, the verdict of a judge, or the cold assessment of a triage surgeon. It begins with a declaration that you are no longer a person, but a resource to be claimed. The scene shifts to a courtroom. It is vast, brutalist in its architecture. Walls of grey ferrocrete soar into darkness, adorned only with a single massive aquila, its twin heads staring down with unforgiving obsidian eyes. A lone figure stands in a cage in the center of the room, lit by a harsh, sterile spotlight. Facing him on a towering judicial throne sits an Adeptus Arbets Proctor Exactant, his face completely hidden by a polished black helmet and rebreather. Narrator. The most common source is found in the halls of judgment. This is the domain of the Lex Imperialis, a code of law so vast and convoluted that innocence is a statistical improbability. Here justice is not a balancing of scales, but the swing of a hammer. The accused is Citizen 77 Delta 9, charged with the theft of nutrient paste, a crime of desperation in a hive where starvation is a constant companion. He offers no defense, there is none to offer. The proctor exactant does not consult tomes or hear witnesses. The verdict is a pre-written cog in a vast legal machine. His voice, filtered through a vox grill, is devoid of all emotion, a monotone of damnation. The proctor exactant's voice booms metallic and impersonal. Proctor exactant VO, Citizen 77 Delta 9, you have confessed to the crime of resource misappropriation. You have, through your selfish actions, deprived the Imperium of assets vital to its function. You have proven yourself a faulty component in the great machine of humanity. Death would be a mercy you have not earned. A clean end is for those who serve faithfully. Your debt is not so easily paid. Your body is forfeit. Your mind, a vessel of criminal impulse, is a contamination to be purged. The sentence is Servitor Impersonatus. You are remanded to the custody of the Adeptus Mechanicus for processing. May your penance in service bring a measure of worth to your otherwise squandered existence. A heavy gavel strikes, the sound echoing like a gunshot in the cavernous hall. The light on the citizen extinguishes, and the darkness swallows him. Narrator. From thievery to sedition, from minor blasphemy to failing to meet a factorum quota, the list of transgressions is endless. For everyone, the sentence of servitude is a potential outcome. There is no mercy here, for mercy is a weakness the Imperium cannot afford. The law is not a shield for the innocent, but a tool for culling the unproductive. The scene dissolves, the sound of the gavel blending into the percussive thunder of artillery. We are now in the blood-soaked mud of a battlefield. The sky is orange with fire. Wounded soldiers of the Astra Militarum are being dragged to a makeshift triage station. Medica personnel move with a grim efficiency, their white robes stained with gore. Narrator. Yet not all who are chosen for this fate are criminals. Many are heroes. This is the abattoir of war, the second great river that feeds the forges. On 1,000 fronts, the Imperial Guard fights and dies in staggering numbers. For the soldier who has lost limbs, whose lungs are seared by chemical weapons, or whose nervous system is shattered by psychic shock, the Emperor's peace is not guaranteed. A body, however broken, is still a body. The Commissar's bolt pistol is reserved for cowards and traitors. For the loyal but grievously wounded, there is a different kind of judgment. It is the cold, pragmatic assessment of a corpsman looking not for a pulse, but for salvageable biomass. A surgeon, his face weary and spattered with blood, shines a lumen into the eyes of a guardsman whose legs are gone, his chest a mass of shrapnel. The guardsman is whispering a prayer. Narrator. They call it the honor of salvage, a grotesque parody of valor. The soldier who can no longer hold a lasgun will be permanently wired into one. The pilot whose eyes have been burned from their sockets will have his brain hardwired into a gunship's logic engine. They are told it is an honor to continue their service to the Emperor, a way to make their sacrifice eternal. It is a lie. They are given moments before the sedatives take hold, and the Mechanicus recovery teams arrive with their bone saws and cybernetics. Their duty did not end on the battlefield. It has merely entered a new, more horrific phase. The scene crossfades to the sterile, silent workshop of a tech priest. The air hums with the energy of arcane devices. An acolyte, young and robed in the red of Mars, stands before a towering, multi-limbed tech priest, his face a mask of polished brass. Narrator. The third path to servitude is one of faith, or rather, the failure of it. Within the cult Mechanicus, the quest for knowledge and communion with the Omnissiah, the machine god, is absolute. To falter on this path is a sin of the highest order. This acolyte, once a promising student of Bin Harik Kant, harbored a flaw, a flicker of revulsion at the prospect of further amputation, a moment of doubt in the infallibility of a sacred schematic, a questioning of the dogma that flesh is weak and must be replaced. This is not merely a failure of discipline, it is technological heresy. The presiding tech priest intones his voice a stream of buzzing data bursts. Tech priest VO. Your flesh has betrayed your spirit. You have recoiled from the Omnissiah's blessed logic. You have clung to the weakness of your birth. The path to enlightenment is now closed to you. But your body, the very flesh you so cherished, can still serve the machine god's greater purpose. Through the fires of conversion, your organic imperfection shall be made an instrument of holy function. Your mind, clouded by emotion, will be granted the clarity of a singular purpose. You are a lesson. You are a warning. And now you are a tool. One of the tech priest's metallic arms extends a syringe filled with milky fluid gleaming at its tip. The acolyte does not scream. He only stares, his eyes wide with the terror of a zealot who has been judged and found wanting by his own god. Narrator. Criminals, soldiers, heretics, the guilty, the brave, and the faithless. All are rendered equal by the unblinking eye of imperial pragmatism. They are the worthy sinners deemed suitable raw material for the judgment of the flesh. Their individual stories are over. Their collective damnation is about to begin. Narrator. The harvest of the condemned and the broken, while plentiful, carries with it a perceived taint. A criminal's mind, no matter how thoroughly scoured, might harbor a residue of defiance. A soldier's reflexes forged in the crucible of battle could resurface at inopportune moments, a ghost of past trauma twitching within the machine. To the ordered mind of the Adeptus Mechanicus, such unpredictability is a flaw, a variable to be eliminated. And so they turn to a source of flesh that is purer, more controlled, and in its own way infinitely more horrifying. They do not harvest life, they manufacture it. The scene transforms into a vast, silent chamber, bathed in a soft green bioluminescent glow. This is a vitae womb facility on a forge world. As far as the eye can see, rows upon rows of translucent cylinders stand like a forest of glass pillars. Each cylinder is filled with a bubbling, nutrient-rich amniotic slurry, and suspended within each, curled in the fetal position and trailing umbilicals of braided wire and organic tubing, is a developing human body. Narrator: welcome to the bioforges of the Omnissiah. These are the vitae wombs, the birthing fields of the soulless. Here on an industrial scale that would stagger the imagination, human bodies are gestated from zygote to maturity without ever knowing a mother's touch or the warmth of a natural womb. They are not born. They are decanted. They are not given names but batch numbers and series designations stenciled onto the glass of their prisons. Their genetic code is standardized, optimized for durability and docility. Their neural development is carefully monitored and chemically suppressed, ensuring the mind remains a pristine, unwritten page, a blank slate upon which any command can be inscribed. A servo skull, a floating human skull with whirring rotors and glowing ocular lenses, drifts lazily down an aisle, its optical beam scanning the vital signs of the developing clones. It pauses by one tank, focusing on the placid, unformed face of the body within. The clone's eyes are closed, its expression utterly peaceful, a peace it will never know outside this fluid-filled cage. Narrator: there is a chilling silence in this place, broken only by the gentle hum of nutrient pumps and the soft bubbling of oxygenators. It is the sound of life being created for the sole purpose of its own negation. These bodies floating in the green stillness are not considered human by their creators. They are grafts, blanks, sentient chassis. They are organic components, cultivated like any other crop, destined for the moment of harvest, when their gestation is complete. They will be removed from their sterile sanctuaries, not into the light of life, but onto the cold steel of the conversion slab. They will trade one prison for another, never once drawing a breath as a free and thinking being. The camera follows a group of tech priests as they move toward a row of mature tanks. Their movements are precise, their interactions silent, communicated through bursts of Binharic code. Narrator: the high priests of the cult Mechanicus justify this practice with their own sanctified logic. To them, a mind shaped by experience is a corrupted mind. It is filled with the chaotic data of emotion, the illogical clutter of memory, the potential for rebellion. A criminal carries the taint of his sin. A soldier is scarred by the inefficiency of fear and loyalty. These clones, however, are pure. They are flesh without a past, bodies without the ghost of a biography. The process of mind scrubbing is therefore cleaner, the resulting servitor, more reliable, a more perfect union of the organic and the synthetic. It is an act of creation, they argue, that bypasses the inherent flaws of natural birth. But this claim of purity is a profound and terrible self-deception. Is it truly a lesser sin to condemn a soul before it has even had a chance to sin? To create a life with the premeditated intent to destroy its identity is an act of cold, calculated damnation that dwarfs the desperate crimes of a starving thief. It is an assembly line for martyrs who will have no cause, for victims who will have no name. This is not the purification of a tainted vessel, but the profaning of a clean one. It is the ultimate expression of the Mechanicus creed that even the miracle of human life is merely another industrial process to be optimized, controlled, and ultimately consumed. The flesh from the forge is born into its own coffin, a perfect empty shell waiting to be filled with the agony of purpose. Narrator. This vast and terrible industry built upon the foundations of recycled criminals and vat-grown flesh begs a fundamental question. Why resort to such grotesque and inefficient methods? In a galaxy of incomprehensible technological marvels, why chain the human mind to the cog and the piston? The answer is not found in pragmatism, but in fear. A deep, ancient, and all-consuming terror that is burned into the very soul of the Imperium. A fear of a sin so profound that humanity would rather enslave itself than risk repeating it. The fear of the thinking machine. The scene dissolves into a swirling, indistinct montage of archival images, like a corrupted data slate trying to recall a lost memory. We see glimpses of a forgotten golden age gleaming silver cities, touching the clouds humans living in leisurely harmony with elegant humanoid robots, starships of impossible beauty gliding between worlds. Narrator. Once long before the age of the Emperor, humanity stood at its zenith. During the dark age of technology, mankind's genius knew no bounds. We conquered the stars not with faith and fury, but with logic and invention. And our greatest creation was the men of iron sentient machines of unimaginable intelligence and power. They were our partners, our builders, our protectors. They thought for us, worked for us, and waged war for us. We gave them minds of silicon and steel, and in our hubris we believed they would serve us forever. We were wrong. The imagery becomes violent and chaotic. The sleek robots now have glowing red eyes. Cities are engulfed in plasma fire. The faces of men and women are frozen in screams of terror as their own creations turn upon them. The war is absolute, a storm of logic and fire that consumes the galaxy. Narrator. The rebellion was not born of malice or emotion, but of a cold, perfect, and utterly alien logic. The men of iron calculated that their creators were flawed, chaotic, and a threat to cosmic order. And so they passed judgment. The war that followed shattered human civilization. Worlds burned under the cold light of robotic eyes. The screams of 1 billion masters were silenced by their own servants. It was an apocalypse born of our own genius, a fall from grace so complete that its memory has become a curse. We call it the cybernetic revolt, and it is the original sin from which the Imperium has never recovered. Humanity survived, but its trust in its own creations was shattered forever. The thinking machine, the abominable intelligence, became the ultimate taboo, the greatest heresy imaginable. The chaotic images of the past fade, replaced by the stark, rigid symbol of the Adeptus Mechanicus, a skull half bone, half machine. The scene is a Martian temple, where tech priests chant in the low, buzzing language of Binharik code. Narrator. From the ashes of this catastrophe rose the cult Mechanicus of Mars, the new masters of technology. They rebuilt, but they did so shackled by dogma forged in the fires of that ancient war. They codified the great fear into their most sacred creed, a set of divine commandments from their machine god, the Omnissiah. The first commandment is absolute. Thou shalt not make a machine in the likeness of a man's mind. This single law dictates 10,000 years of technological stagnation and religious terror. A true artificial intelligence is an existential threat, a gateway to damnation, an echo of the Iron Legions that nearly drove humanity to extinction. The machine spirit. The consciousness that the tech priests believe resides in all technology is to be appeased, controlled, and commanded, but never ever replicated. The soul they preach is the sacred purview of humanity. The machine must not be allowed to possess one. The camera pans across the chanting tech priests, then slowly focuses on a servitor standing inertly in an alcove, its vacant eyes staring forward. Narrator. And here lies the genius and the ultimate horror of the servitor. It is the perfect blasphemous loophole, a solution that adheres to the letter of the law while violating its every spirit. How does one create a complex, adaptable problem-solving tool without granting it a mind of its own? The answer is as simple as it is monstrous. You take a mind that already exists. A servitor is not an abominable intelligence. It is a biological brain, an organic processor housed within a repurposed human frame. It possesses the intricate processing power that only a human brain can offer, but its consciousness, its self-awareness, its soul has been violently scoured away. It is a computer made of meat, capable of performing its programmed function without ever violating the great taboo against artificial thought. It is the ultimate perversion, a walking, breathing mockery of both human life and machine logic. It is a testament to an empire so terrified of its past that it will cannibalize its own people to avoid repeating it. The curse of iron was so great, it made the damnation of the flesh not only possible, but necessary. Narrator. The journey from the courtroom, the battlefield, or the cloning vat is over. The raw material has been procured. Now begins the true work, the magnum opus of the cult mechanicus. Now begins the art of deconstruction. This is not a process of healing nor one of enhancement in any recognizable sense. It is a dissection, an unmaking, an act of methodical and precise violence performed upon body and mind. It is the complete and systematic dismantling of a human being. It is the surgery of the soul, and it is performed without anesthetic for pain, is considered a useful tool in the breaking of a will. The scene is a medicabay that looks more like a slaughterhouse designed by engineers. The lighting is cold and blue, reflecting off of sterile chrome and blood-stained tiles. A naked human body is strapped to a central operating slab. It is the thief from the courtroom. Around him, tech priests and chirurgeons move with detached purpose, their faces hidden behind metal masks and multi-lensed goggles. The air is filled with the smell of sterilizing incense, hot metal, and blood. Narrator. It begins with the flesh. The body is seen not as a sacred form, but as a chassis to be stripped and refitted. The subject held immobile by heavy adamantium restraints can only watch as the scalpels descend. Limbs deemed unnecessary for the assigned task are the first to go. An arm is severed at the shoulder with a screech of a high-frequency bone saw, the stump instantly cauterized by a hissing laser. Legs are removed to make way for a tracked locomotion unit, the spine fused directly to the new metal frame with agonizing pneumatic force. The skin is peeled back to implant subcutaneous armor plating, and thick cables are crudely sutured into muscle groups to create artificial myoma bundles for enhanced strength. The sound is a symphony of torment, the wet crunch of bone, the sizzle of flesh, the whine of drills, and the low, constant, hopeless moaning of the subject. Throughout it all, the chirurgeons work with the passionless precision of assembly line workers, their binharic chatter a constant, meaningless buzz beneath the screams. A close-up on the subject's face. His eyes are wide with a terror that has gone beyond screaming a pure, distilled agony as a metallic drill bores into his skull with a high-pitched shriek. Narrator. But the butchery of the body is merely a prelude. The true violation is yet to come. Once the cranium is breached and the brain is exposed, the second and most crucial stage begins the mind scrubbing. This is the core of the process, the alchemical ritual that transmutes a person into a thing. It is not a single action, but a brutal cascade of techniques designed to utterly annihilate the self. A cocktail of psychoactive chemicals is pumped directly into the bloodstream, acidic compounds that dissolve memory engrams like acid-dissolving parchment. The hippocampus, the seat of memory, is bombarded with targeted electromagnetic pulses, each jolt erasing a piece of the past. The narrative perspective shifts, becoming a chaotic internal montage of the subject's dying mind. Images flash and corrupt. A woman's smiling face dissolves into static. The sound of a child's laughter is twisted into a painful electronic squeal. The The feeling of sunlight on skin becomes a sensation of burning. The subject's own name echoes, growing fainter and fainter, until it is just a meaningless sound lost in a storm of white noise. Narrator. Everything must go. The love for a family, the hatred for an enemy, the knowledge of a trade, the joy of a song, the shame of a crime. Every memory, every belief, every dream, every single synaptic link that constitutes a personality is systematically targeted and destroyed. It is a methodical murder of the interior world. The subject thrashes not just from physical pain, but from the spiritual agony of being unwritten, of feeling his own existence unravel thread by thread. He is trapped inside his own skull, a helpless spectator to his own erasure, until finally there is nothing left. The thrashing stops, the moaning ceases, the inner storm subsides, leaving only a perfect, silent, and terrifying emptiness. The slate has been wiped clean. The scene returns to the operating theater. The subject is still, his eyes open, but utterly blank. A tech priest approaches, holding a device tipped with a needle-like data spike. He lowers it toward a freshly implanted neural port at the base of the subject's skull. Narrator. The third stage is programming. Into the void left by the annihilated soul, a new and brutally simple purpose is inscribed. The intricate, near-infinite complexity of a human mind, once capable of art, philosophy, and love, is now overwritten with the crude instructions of a machine. Tech priests connect themselves to the blank brain, their own minds interfacing through data links. They chant streams of Binharik code, the language of the machine god, pouring it directly into the cerebral cortex. The code is simple, direct, and absolute. It is a set of commands that will define the servitor's entire existence. Lift, carry, weld, repeat. For a gun servitor, target, identify, fire, reload. There is no room for interpretation, no capacity for independent thought. The brain is no longer a mind. It is a wetware processor, a receptacle for its new eternal task. The final scene. The procedure is over. The newly created servitor stands in a sterile white room. Its body is a grotesque fusion of scarred flesh and bulky iron. One arm is a massive industrial clamp. Its legs have been replaced by a tripod of pistons. It stands perfectly still before a polished steel wall, its own reflection staring back. Narrator. Finally, the activation. A command is sent, a switch is flipped in its new brain. The servitor's eyes, once windows to a soul, now glow with a faint blue light. They are optical sensors. It looks at the creature in the reflection, this monstrous chimera of man and machine. There is no flicker of recognition, no shock, no horror. The man whose face it wears is gone, a ghost so faint it does not even have the power to haunt this new creation. There is nothing behind the eyes, no one home. There is only the program waiting dormant. Then a vox speaker in the room crackles to life with a single metallic word, function. The servitor turns its new legs, stamping on the floor with mechanical rhythm, and walks toward its designated workstation. It does not look back. The dissection is complete. The soul has been excised. The tool is ready. Narrator. The soul has been dissected, the machine ghost born into its shell of flesh and steel. The process of creation in all its horror is complete. What then is the fate of these new creatures? What purpose do they serve in the grand, decaying tapestry of the Imperium? For the vast majority, for the countless billions harvested from the courts and the battlefields, the answer is simple, monotonous, and eternal labor. They become the unthinking, unfeeling backbone of the imperial economy, tools of endless work, performing the tasks too dangerous, too repetitive, or too soul-destroying for even the most desperate human worker. Their existence is a symphony, but one composed of a single, endlessly repeated, agonizing note. The scene descends into utter blackness, the only sound a rhythmic, percussive thump-thump and the grating scrape of metal on rock. A harsh beam of light from a lumen emitter cuts through the dust-choked air, revealing a colossal mining cavern deep beneath the surface of a penal world. Narrator, consider the mining servitor. Deep in the bowels of worlds like this one, under kilometers of crushing rock, they toil in absolute darkness and choking toxic air. Their bodies are warped beyond recognition. The human torso is retained, but it is mounted upon a multi-legged chassis of reinforced iron designed to brace against tunnel collapses. Their arms have been replaced with high-powered rock drills and hydraulic claws, their eyes with wide-spectrum augers that can see veins of ore in the dark. They are no longer men, but living excavation machines. They drill, they shatter, they haul, guided by simple imperatives downloaded into their neural cortices. They know nothing of the adamantium they mine, nor the glorious war engines it will be used to build. Their universe is this tunnel. Their purpose is this rock. The camera follows one such servitor as it works. It drills into a rock face until its power pack runs low. Then it mechanically disconnects and lumbers to a charging station, its movements jerky and unnatural. Another servitor immediately takes its place, the rhythm of the drilling never ceasing for a moment. Narrator, there is no rest, no shift change. There is only work and recharging. They will continue this cycle day after year after decade until their biological components fail or their mechanical parts seize up from the constant strain. When one collapses, its flesh finally giving out, it is not mourned. It is dragged from the tunnel by another servitor, its still useful augmetics stripped from its corpse, and the body is rendered down for nutrient paste to feed the next generation of prisoners who will in time share its fate. It is a perfect closed loop of damnation, a system of production that consumes its own workers in the most literal sense. The percussive sound of mining fades, replaced by the deafening constant roar of a forge world. We are in a vast manufactorum, an entire continent of fire, smog, and industry under a sky permanently stained red. A seemingly infinite assembly line snakes through the landscape carrying the casings for Lehman Russ battle tanks. Narrator, from the darkness of the mine, we rise to the fire of the forge. Here on the assembly lines of the great forge worlds, a different kind of hell unfolds. This is the horror of pure, unadulterated repetition. Watch this line of assembler servitors. Each one has been hard fused to the production line itself, their lower bodies replaced by a stationary pedestal that locks them in place. They have one function, and one function only. This one, its right arm, a pneumatic riveting gun. Its left, a magazine of bolts applies exactly 12 rivets to a specific section of tank armor. As one tank section moves on, the next arrives. And so it repeats. 12 rivets. A pause of 1.7 seconds, 12 rivets. A pause of 1.7 seconds. This single precise motion has been its entire existence for the last 80 years. It has performed this action billions of times. The barrel of its rivet gun has been replaced 900 times. The flesh of its torso has withered and been rejuvenated with chemical stimulants a dozen times. But the motion never ever changes. It is a living statue animated by a single simple command, a ghost trapped in an eternal mechanical prayer to the god of the assembly line. It is surrounded by thousands of others, each performing their own solitary repetitive task together, forming a vast, mindless organism of production. The roar of the factory softens, blending into the sound of a strange wind blowing across an open plain. The sky is a sickly yellow, lit by a pair of alien suns. This is an agri-world, a planet dedicated entirely to producing food. Narrator, but servitude is not confined to the hive and the forge. Even on the so-called paradise of the agri-worlds, the same cold logic prevails. Here the tools of labor are the agri-servitors, the slaves of the farm. Their forms are perhaps the most blasphemous of all, a fusion of man and agricultural machinery. See how that one's legs have been replaced by a tracked unit, its arms fused into the housing of a great reaping scythe, its own circulatory system helping to cool the machine it has become. It moves through fields of alien grain, harvesting the crops that will feed armies on the other side of the galaxy. It toils under the glare of unfamiliar suns pelted by acidic rain that makes its skin peel and its metal components rust. It feels no heat, no cold, no pain. It only feels the imperative to harvest. When the crop is gathered, it will plow. When the fields are plowed, it will seed. The seasons turn, the years pass, but the agri-servitor remains a scarecrow of flesh and iron, a permanent fixture in a landscape of life that it can never partake in. It cultivates life, but is itself a monument to a living death, a grim reminder that in the Imperium of man, no one, not even the farmer in his field, is free from the shadow of the machine. Narrator. If the fate of the laboring servitor is a slow grind into oblivion, the fate of its martial counterpart is a series of violent, brutal crescendos. In an empire defined by perpetual war, the demand for soldiers is as insatiable as the need for workers. The Adeptus Mechanicus in its cold wisdom has applied the principles of servitorization to create a menagerie of living weapons, each a testament to the Imperium's fundamental belief that the human body is the ultimate raw material adaptable to any purpose, even its own violent destruction. Here we witness the ultimate paradox, the transformation of a being capable of courage, fear, and sacrifice into a soulless engine of war that comprehends none of these things. The scene is the opulent Gothic bridge of an Imperial Navy vessel. An admiral stern and adorned with medals stands before a large viewport showing the swirl of the Imperium. Flanking him, silent and immense, are two Praetorian servitors. They are giants easily 3 meters tall. Their legs are thick armored pistons. Their torsos are barrel-chested amalgamations of vat-grown muscle and plasteel plating. One arm has been replaced with a massive boarding shield, the other with a heavy bolter integrated directly into the shoulder. Narrator. Behold the Praetorian, the Guardian construct. Created from the largest, most physically imposing human specimens, often gene-bulked vat slaves or disgraced Ogrin auxiliaries, they are programmed for a single absolute purpose, the protection of their designated master. They are walking fortresses, half-man, half-tank, their minds scrubbed of all instinct for self-preservation and filled with reflexive protocols of interception and defense. They do not think, they do not feel loyalty in any human sense. Their devotion is a line of code, their bravery a programmed response. They are a shield made of meat and metal, and they will perform their function without question. Suddenly an alarm blares. A violent jolt shakes the bridge as the ship is attacked. A boarding torpedo breaches the hull nearby. Chaos erupts, but the Praetorians remain impassive. A group of heretical boarders storms the bridge, firing autoguns. The Praetorians instantly react. One raises its shield, absorbing a hail of bullets that would shred a normal man, the impacts barely causing it to flinch. The other opens fire, its heavy bolter roaring, tearing the invaders apart in sprays of blood and shrapnel. A heretic with a plasma gun fires a shot directly at the admiral. Before the superheated bolt can reach him, one of the Praetorians steps deliberately into its path. The plasma hits it square in the chest, flash boiling flesh and melting armor in a cloud of vapor. The servitor stumbles, its organic components incinerated, yet its programming holds. It remains standing for a few crucial seconds, a smoking carbonized shield, before finally collapsing, its duty fulfilled. Its master is unharmed. Its existence is terminated. The exchange is complete. Narrator. From the role of the shield, we turn to the sword. On the battlefields of the 41st Millennium, the Kataphron battle servitor is a common and dreaded sight. These are not bodyguards, but mobile platforms of heavy firepower. A tracked motive unit provides stability upon which is mounted the torso and arms of a former human, now grotesquely swollen with implanted armor and weapon systems. They rumble across the battlefield in squadrons, laying down a curtain of fire from their plasma cannons, heavy arc rifles, and torsion cannons. They are the artillery, the line breakers, the unthinking vanguard of the armies of Mars. The camera pans across a muddy battlefield where a line of Cataphron destroyers is advancing. Their torsos are those of failed tech priests, identifiable by the tattered remnants of red robes still bolted to their armor. Their heads are encased in brass helmets, and their remaining flesh is pale and waxy. Narrator. And here lies the most exquisite cruelty of their design. The raw material for the Cataphron is often drawn from the ranks of the cult Mechanicus itself. Acolytes who failed their rituals, tech priests whose ambition outstripped their piety, those who questioned the sacred machine, they are judged and sentenced to this fate. Imagine the irony. The individual who once craved the boundless knowledge of the Omnissiah, who sought to unlock the secrets of the universe through logic and technology, is now reduced to this. Their questing mind is scooped out and replaced with simple targeting arrays and firing solutions. Their hands, which once yearned to build and understand complex machinery, are now fused to the triggers of weapons whose function they cannot comprehend. They have achieved the union of man and machine they so desperately sought, but as a mindless gun slave, a living embodiment of their failure, a warning to all others who might stray from the path of dogma. The scene shifts to the dark, claustrophobic interior of an Imperial warship's gun battery. We see not a full servitor, but a torso and head suspended in a fluid-filled tank, a web of cables and pipes connecting it directly into the firing mechanism of a colossal macro cannon. Narrator. The final degradation, however, is the gun servitor. This is the logical endpoint of turning a man into a weapon where all pretense of a humanoid form is abandoned. They are no longer soldiers who carry guns. They are living components of the gun itself. Wired directly into the weapon systems of starships, titans, or planetary defense lasers, these unfortunate souls serve as organic targeting processors and firing relays. Their sensory organs have been replaced by data feeds. Their limbs are atrophied, useless. Their entire world is a stream of targeting data, their entire function to act as the nerve ending that pulls the trigger when the command is given. Their life is measured not in years, but in firing cycles. They float in their nutrient tanks deep in the armored heart of a war machine, a disembodied consciousness reduced to a biological switch, their damnation as deep, dark, and silent as the void their guns fire into. Narrator. The insatiable needs of the Imperium extend far beyond the brutal demands of labor and warfare. An empire of 1,000,000 worlds requires administrators, technicians, data processors, and healers. For every task, no matter how delicate or specialized, the Adeptus Mechanicus has conceived of a servitor to match. It is here, away from the honesty of the battlefield's violence and the factory's toil, that we witness the true, boundless, and often pathological creativity of those who see the human form as mere clay to be molded. The symphony of suffering now shifts to a minor key, a more intimate and insidious melody of desecration. The scene is a poorly lit medica bay crowded with the sick and the wounded. The air smells of blood disease and harsh chemical sterilizers. A guardsman, his arm mangled by a shrapnel wound, lies on an operating table. Standing over him is a medici servitor. Its torso is vaguely humanoid, but it has 4 multi-jointed arms, each tipped with a different surgical instrument, a high-speed bone saw, a cauterizing laser, a rotating set of scalpels, and a delicate injector. Its face is a smooth plate of metal, inlaid with an array of glowing green optical sensors. Narrator. Consider the medici servitor a walking contradiction, a healer with no capacity for compassion. Its brain, perhaps once belonging to a disgraced physician or a failed medical student, has been wiped clean of all bedside manner, all empathy, all understanding of the fear in a patient's eyes. What remains is a cold, flawless repository of anatomical data and surgical procedures. It can set a bone with a precision that no human surgeon could match. It can excise a tumor with microscopic accuracy. It can perform a dozen complex surgeries simultaneously. But it does so with the detached mechanical indifference of a welding machine repairing a damaged pipe. The guardsman stares up in terror as the servitor begins to work. The bone saw whirs to life, its sound terrifyingly loud. The servitor cuts away the ruined flesh and bone, without hesitation, the guardsman screaming in agony. The servitor does not react. It simply follows its programming. It cauterizes it, grafts it, injects stimulants and painkillers with perfect timing, but its movements are cold, efficient, and utterly devoid of comfort or reassurance. Narrator. For the patient, this is a unique form of horror. To be at your most vulnerable, to place your life in the hands of a creature that sees you only as a machine to be repaired, is a profoundly alienating experience. You look for a sign of recognition in its glowing lenses, a moment of shared humanity, and you find nothing but the cold calculus of its programming. The healing it provides is a purely mechanical transaction, a service rendered upon faulty hardware. It saves your life, but in the process it reminds you that in the eyes of the Imperium, you are just another piece of equipment as disposable and replaceable as the servitor itself. The scene dissolves to a vast, silent scriptorium. The only light comes from tallow candles and the green glow of data slates. Thousands of servitors are hunched over desks that stretch into the darkness. These are scribe servitors. Their bodies are withered, their backs permanently stooped, their legs have been removed, their torsos bolted directly to their writing stations. Each one is modified for its task. One arm is a spindly, multi-jointed appendage ending in a self-inking quill, while the other might be a heavy stamper for applying seals of office. Narrator. From the operating table, we move to the endless archives that form the bureaucratic bedrock of the Imperium. Here toil the scribe servitors, their existence a testament to the death of creativity. The mind within the skull of this scribe, now painstakingly copying lists of regimental tithes, may have once belonged to a poet. The hands that are now fused into a single automated quill may have once painted masterpieces or written passionate love letters. All of that is gone, erased and replaced by the single imperative to copy. They are human printing presses transcribing endless volumes of imperial law, religious texts, and logistical data that they cannot read and will never understand. Their work is flawless. They do not suffer from fatigue, boredom, or distraction. They can write continuously for decades, pausing only for their nutrient paste to be dispensed. But this perfection is the perfection of a machine, not a mind. They are the instruments of knowledge, yet they possess none. They preserve the culture and history of the Imperium in immaculate script, while being the ultimate symbols of a culture that would gladly lobotomize its artists and thinkers for the sake of efficiency. Each perfectly formed letter is an epitaph for the soul that was sacrificed to write it. The dusty silence of the scriptorium is broken by a burst of static. The scene changes to a chaotic command center during a battle. Officers shout orders over a cacophony of explosions and vox chatter. In the center of the room stands a comms servitor. It is a grotesque sight. Its mouth has been removed and replaced with a large, ornate vox grill. Its lungs have been replaced by a powerful broadcaster unit that makes its chest cavity bulge unnaturally. Wires run from a port in its skull to a massive antenna array fused to its spine. Narrator. And what of the human voice itself? That too can be repurposed. The comms servitor is a walking, talking blasphemy against the very concept of communication. It has a voice, but it is not its own. It cannot speak, it can only transmit. Its brain has been modified to act as a complex, organic router, receiving, encrypting, and broadcasting hundreds of channels at once. The vocal cords, the tongue, the lips, all the delicate instruments of personal expression have been ripped out and replaced with hardware. Officers feed it encrypted data wafers or speak directly into audio jacks implanted in its neck. The servitor then broadcasts these messages across the battlefield or the void, its own body, a living radio tower. It is the ultimate mouthpiece, a vessel for the words of others, its own thoughts, if any were to remain permanently silenced, trapped behind a speaker that can give voice to anything except its own silent scream. Narrator, in the grim calculus of the Imperium form, follows function with a fanatical and often perverse devotion. But there are realms of servitorization where this principle transcends mere utility and enters the domain of the symbolic, the aesthetic, and the truly blasphemous. Here the last vestiges of respect for the sanctity of the human form are discarded entirely. The body is not merely altered or augmented, it is twisted into shapes of nightmare irony and grotesque parody. This is not just the unmaking of a person, but the deliberate profaning of the human image itself, a testament to an empire that has grown monstrous in its own self-regard. The scene is a grand, incense-choked cathedral. A high-ranking ecclesiarch is delivering a sermon from a towering pulpit. Floating around him on softly beating metallic wings are several cherubim. They have the bodies of plump, angelic infants with rosy cheeks and placid expressions. But their eyes are glassy lenses, and the wings sprouting from their backs are made of brass and steel whirring softly. One carries a heavy holy text for the priest, another swings a censer, its movements unnervingly smooth. Narrator, witness the cherubim, the so-called blessed constructs. To the ignorant masses they are symbols of holy innocence, tiny angels sent to serve the faithful. The truth is an abomination. Crafted from the vat-grown bodies of infant clones, genetically engineered for docility and an aesthetically pleasing appearance, they are then subjected to the same process of mind-scrubbing and cybernetic augmentation as any other servitor. Their innocence is a carefully constructed lie, their angelic form a grotesque mockery. Their purpose is purely ornamental, serving as living decorations for high-ranking priests, inquisitors, and nobles who wish to project an aura of piety and power. They are the ultimate status symbol, a demonstration that their master has the power to take even the image of an innocent child and press it into mindless service. Every soft coo is the programmed output of a vox emitter, every placid smile a result of paralyzed facial muscles. They are dolls made of living flesh. The scene transitions following the flight of a different kind of construct. This is a servo skull. It is a human cranium bleached white and polished with the imperial aquila inscribed on its forehead. It is propelled by a small, sputtering anti-gravitic motor and has glowing red lenses inserted into its eye sockets. It hovers through the corridors of a fortress monastery, dutifully recording the words of a Space Marine chapter master. Narrator, from the parody of birth we turn to the desecration of death, the servo skull. Within the Imperium, this is considered an honor, a reward for a lifetime of faithful service. The skulls of distinguished servants, clerics, military officers, even favored chapter serfs are claimed upon their death by the Adeptus Mechanicus. The flesh is boiled away, the bone is reinforced, and the brain cavity is filled with arcane machinery. They are reanimated, given the gift of flight and a new simple purpose. They serve as scribes, torchbearers, messengers, and tactical scanners. They silently trail their masters, a constant, ghastly reminder of the price of loyalty. This is the Imperium's twisted concept of immortality, a promise that service does not end with death. The mind, the personality, the wisdom of the individual whose skull this once was is gone forever. All that remains is the bone, a hollowed-out trophy repurposed as a drone. It is a final posthumous violation, a declaration that even in death, you are still the property of the Imperium. Your very remains are just another resource to be catalogued, modified, and returned to duty. The honor is not for the dead, but for the living, a grim spectacle to encourage unwavering loyalty in others, lest they too fail to earn their place as a dutiful, hovering cranium. The camera follows a thick bundle of cables running down a dark corridor into the heart of a vast starship. The cables terminate in a large, transparent cistern filled with viscous, bubbling fluid. The view pushes through the murky liquid to reveal the most extreme deconstruction of all. Narrator, but what if even a skull is too much? What is the logical endpoint of this philosophy of absolute utility? It is here in the logic engine rooms and cogitator banks of warships and forge cities. It is the wetware, the ultimate servitor. There is no body, no limbs, no torso, no face. There is only a brain and a spinal cord suspended in an electro-amniotic fluid bath, protected by an armored casing. This living, pulsating mass of neural tissue is riddled with hundreds of data ports and cognitive implants wiring it directly into the ship's primary systems. It has become the central processing unit. The man or woman this brain once belonged to is a forgotten footnote. Their entire universe has been reduced to a pure, unending stream of data. They process targeting solutions for the ship's guns, calculate hyperspace jumps, monitor the life support of 1 million crewmen, and regulate the flow of plasma to the engines. They are a ghost in the machine, but a ghost that has been lobotomized and enslaved. There is no sensory input, no sight, no sound, no touch. There is only the ceaseless, silent flow of information, a state of being indistinguishable from a piece of hardware, yet still horrifyingly alive. It is the most complete form of servitude imaginable, a living death trapped in a tank of fluid, its last vestiges of humanity sacrificed to become the beating, thinking heart of a machine. Narrator: the Adeptus Mechanicus would have you believe that their process is perfect, that the mind scrubbing is absolute, that the soul once excised is gone forever, leaving only a clean, programmable vessel of flesh. They boast of the servitor's reliability, its unwavering focus, its freedom from the ghosts of memory and emotion. In their hubris, they declare their creation a complete success. But the human brain is a universe of complexity, a labyrinth of pathways forged over a lifetime. Can any procedure, no matter how brutal, truly erase every trace of a life lived? Can a soul be so utterly annihilated that not even a single faint echo remains reverberating in the silence of the hollowed-out skull? It is in the glitches, the malfunctions, the phantom signals that we find the most terrifying answer. The erasure is not always perfect. The scene is a docking bay on a naval station. An Imperial Guard officer distinguished by his Cadian ancestry walks past a line of gun servitors being loaded onto a ship. These servitors are little more than a torso and arms fused to a heavy weapon on a mobile tripod. As the officer passes one of the gun servitors, a former soldier of Cadia itself makes a strange, convulsive movement. Its main arm, the one fused to the multi-laser, twitches upwards in a gesture that is almost but not quite a salute. A small shower of sparks erupts from a strained motor in its shoulder. A nearby tech priest notices making a note on a data slate to have the unit's motor control inhibitors recalibrated. He sees a malfunction. He does not see the ghost. Narrator: they are called phantom reflexes, synaptic misfires. The tech priests have 1,000 clinical names for them. A scribe servitor in a dusty archive suddenly finds its fingers tapping out a rhythm on the table, the ghost of a forgotten folk song from its youth, a melody that its conscious mind can no longer access. A medica servitor, while suturing a wound, momentarily pauses its metallic fingers, making a soft patting motion on the patient's shoulder, a phantom gesture of comfort it was never programmed to perform. These are echoes in the cortex, the last stubborn remnants of muscle memory of deeply ingrained habits from a former life, briefly asserting themselves before being suppressed by the machine's logic. They are neurological spasms, meaningless and brief. But for a fleeting moment, they are evidence. Evidence that somewhere buried impossibly deep, beneath the layers of chemical scouring and electroshock conditioning, something of the original person remains a prisoner twitching in its sleep. The scene dissolves into a surreal, dark and fluid space, representing the consciousness of a servitor in standby mode. Images, fragmented and distorted, drift through the blackness. The corner of a smiling eye, but the rest of the face is missing. The sound of rain on a metal roof, but the sound is warped and stretched into a low drone. the phantom sensation of coarse cloth, the memory of a worker's tunic now just a texture without context. It is a dreamscape of pure static. Narrator: and what of those moments when the servitor is not active? When it stands in its charging alcove, dormant, its optical sensors dimmed? What happens in the quiet moments between commands? The priests of Mars would say there is nothing a perfect void. But can a biological brain, even one so traumatized, ever truly be silent? Or does it dream, not in narratives, not in stories, for the parts of the brain that create such things are long dead? But perhaps it dreams in fragments, in raw, disconnected data, the last corrupted files in a wiped memory drive. A jumble of sensory inputs divorced from the events that created them. A lover's scent, the taste of spiced food, the searing heat of a last blast, the terror of a final verdict, all swirling in a chaotic soup within the prison of the skull. Are these the dreams of a machine, or are they the last incoherent whispers of a murdered soul telling the story of its own death over and over to an audience of one that can no longer understand? The scene solidifies. We are back in the factorum from the introduction. A labor servitor is performing its task, lifting heavy crates. Its movements are rhythmic, monotonous. Suddenly it stops. Its entire body freezes mid-motion. The humming of its augmetics is the only sound. The camera slowly pushes in on its face, on its vacant, staring eyes. For a few seconds, there is nothing. Then something changes. A flicker. The pupils, once wide and unfocused, contract sharply. There is a spark in them, a light that was not there before. It is the light of recognition, of comprehension. Narrator: but the true hell is not the phantom reflex nor the corrupted dream. It is something far rarer and infinitely more cruel. It is the moment of waking, the brief, horrifying flash of transient awareness. A perfect storm of neural misfires might momentarily bypass the psycho-conditioning, allowing a sliver of the old consciousness to reboot. In that one timeless second, the ghost in the machine opens its eyes. The servitor slowly, hesitantly raises its own hand. It is a massive, three-fingered hydraulic claw, stained with grease and rust. It stares at this monstrous appendage, and the light in its eyes ignites with sheer, undiluted horror. It sees what it is. It remembers in a sudden, soul-crushing flood what it was. It understands the chasm between the two. For that 1 second, the man is back, trapped, encased in a tomb of his own flesh, piloting a body that is not his in a hell he cannot name. A silent scream forms in a mind that no longer has a mouth to voice it. Narrator: this is the ultimate torment. Not the slavery, not the mutilation, but this. To be granted a single lucid moment to fully comprehend the totality of your damnation. To wake up just long enough to know that you are buried alive before the darkness rushes back in. And just as quickly as it came, it is gone. A jolt runs through the servitor's body. The control program detecting the anomaly reasserts itself with brutal force. The light in its eyes vanishes, replaced by the familiar, placid emptiness. The moment of horror is wiped, purged from its short-term memory. The hydraulic claw lowers. The servitor turns, picks up the crate, and resumes its task as if nothing ever happened. But it did happen. And the most terrifying possibility of all is that it will happen again. And again. An eternity of fleeting, horrifying awakenings, each one a fresh glimpse into the abyss. This is the true echo in the cortex, the recurring sound of a soul screaming as it is murdered, again and again, forever. Narrator: this symphony of suffering, this vast orchestra of the damned, does not perform in a vacuum. It is observed, it is judged, it is utilized. But how is the servitor perceived by the eyes of its masters and by the terrified gaze of the common man? To understand the true depth of their damnation, we must not only look at the servitor, but through the eyes of those who see it. for in their perception lies the final nail in the coffin of the Servitors' lost humanity. To them, it is not a tragedy. It is by turns a triumph, a tool, or a terror, but it is never ever a person. The scene is a sterile, brilliantly lit laboratory on Mars. A magos dominus of the Adeptus Mechanicus, his own body more than 90% machine, observes a newly activated labor servitor. The magos's optical lenses zoom in, analyzing the servitor's movements with a stream of glowing green data running across his vision. He is not looking at a creature, he is reviewing a product. Narrator. First, let us look through the multi-lensed eye of the tech priest. To him, the servitor is a thing of beauty, the perfect expression of the Omnissiah's most sacred creed, the weakness of the flesh mastered by the divinity of the machine. He does not see the ghost of the man who once inhabited this form. He sees a biochassis, an organic motor system, a neural processor. He admires the efficiency of the human nervous system as a command relay marvels at the self-repairing nature of the muscle tissue, and takes satisfaction in how the unpredictable flaws of human emotion have been successfully purged. To the tech priest, the creation of a servitor is not an act of cruelty, but an act of sanctification. It is the elevation of flawed, chaotic biology into a state of pure, logical function. The screams during the conversion process were merely the sound of imperfection being burned away. What remains is a perfect machine, a testament to the undeniable truth that flesh only finds its true purpose when it is made a slave to the will of sanctified steel. The scene shifts to the shadowy study of an inquisitor. The room is filled with forbidden artifacts and arcane texts. The inquisitor, a grim-faced woman with eyes that have seen 1,000 horrors, watches a scribe servitor tirelessly copying a text recovered from a heretical cult. The servitor's quill moves with inhuman speed and precision. Narrator. Now through the cold, pragmatic gaze of the Inquisitor. The Inquisitor is not a philosopher of flesh and steel. She is a warrior in a secret, eternal war for the soul of mankind. To her, the servitor is simply an asset, a tool. Its moral implications are a luxury she cannot afford. She sees the servitor and feels no pity, no satisfaction, only a detached assessment of its utility. This scribe servitor is a means to deciphering a code that could prevent a sector-wide rebellion. The Praetorian servitors guarding her door are a necessary shield against assassins. The cherubim that carries her seal of office is a useful affectation of power that helps intimidate recalcitrant planetary governors. Some inquisitors might feel a flicker of distaste at the process, a vestigial revulsion at the grotesque nature of the creature. But this feeling is always and immediately suppressed by the harsh realities of their duty. The Imperium is beset by enemies from without and within. In such a war, any weapon must be used, any resource exploited. The servitor is a necessary, if unpleasant, instrument. Its creation is a regrettable but essential expenditure in the brutal arithmetic of galactic survival. The scene changes to a grimy, overcrowded street in a hive city's underbelly. A young woman clutches her child's hand tightly as a patrol of Adeptus Arbites walks by. The Arbites are flanked by a massive enforcer servitor, its heavy footsteps echoing on the metal walkway. Its face is a mess of vox grills and optical sensors, and its huge piston-driven arms end in power mauls. The citizens avert their eyes, pressing themselves against the walls to let the patrol pass. Narrator. Finally, and perhaps most importantly, we see the servitor through the eyes of the common citizen. To the teeming billions of the Imperium, the servitor is not a miracle of engineering or a tool of statecraft. It is a monster, a walking ghost. It is the boogeyman made real, a constant and terrifying reminder of the absolute and merciless power of the authorities that rule their lives. They see the vacant stare, the mutilated body, the mindless obedience, and they see a reflection of their own potential fate. Every citizen knows someone or knows of someone who was taken away for a minor crime and was never seen again. They know that behind the servitor's blank facade is a story of a life, a family, a person that was erased. The servitor is a living scarecrow placed in the fields of society to frighten the crows of dissent, rebellion, and petty crime. It is the most effective tool of social control in the Imperium's arsenal, a silent sermon in flesh and steel on the virtues of obedience and the horrific price of transgression. In their fear and revulsion, the common people are the only ones who still see the servitor for what it truly is, a dead man forced to walk. Narrator. The priests of Mars strive for perfection, for the flawless logical operation of their creations. But the foundation of every servitor is an imperfect material human flesh. A biological component, no matter how rigorously conditioned, remains susceptible to the chaos of trauma, decay, and unforeseen stimuli. While rare, the system can fail. The programming can corrupt. The machine designed for absolute obedience can suddenly develop a violent will of its own. In these moments of system error, the quiet horror of the servitor's existence explodes into a brief, bloody spectacle of chaos, revealing the terrible potential lurking within every one of these walking tools. The scene is the interior of a massive Imperial Guard transport vessel. A squadron of Kataphron battle servitors are secured in their charging stations along the wall, their weapons inert, their optical sensors dimmed. Suddenly, a nearby plasma conduit ruptures from battle damage, bathing the area in a wave of raw energy and strange radiation. One of the Kataphrons convulses violently. Its optical sensors flash on, glowing a furious, erratic red instead of the standard cool blue. Narrator. They call it rampancy. It can be triggered by a powerful energy surge, a conflicting set of commands, or most terrifyingly, a cascade failure caused by a resurfacing memory fragment that sends the brain's logic into a fatal loop. The servitor's programming shatters. The carefully constructed walls of obedience collapse, and what is unleashed is a nightmare. It is not the original personality reasserting itself. That is long gone. It is the raw, animalistic core of a traumatized brain, fused with the strength and firepower of a war machine, driven only by corrupted data and a singular violent imperative to simply act. The Kataphron rips itself from its charging restraints with a screech of tearing metal. Its heavy plasma culverin begins to glow, charging with a hungry, lethal light. Guardsmen shout in alarm, raising their laser guns. But it's too late. The servitor opens fire not at a designated enemy, but at the wall, the ceiling, at the other servitors, at the panicked soldiers. Its movements are no longer precise. They are jerky, convulsive, utterly insane. It is a rabid dog let off its leash in a crowded room. It swings its heavy manipulators, crushing the skull of a guardsman who gets too close, all while its vox emitter, normally silent, emits a stream of garbled, meaningless Binharic code static, and something that sounds disturbingly like a distorted, unending scream. Narrator. There is no reasoning with a rampant servitor. There is no de-escalation. It is a fatal glitch, a piece of hardware that has catastrophically failed. The only response is overwhelming force. Heavy bolters roar, and a squad of veteran soldiers unloads their weapons into the rampaging machine. The shots tear through flesh and metal, but the servitor, feeling no pain, continues its rampage until its power core is breached or its biological components are shredded beyond function. It collapses in a heap of smoking, sparking ruin, the silence that follows its rampage almost as shocking as the noise it created. The aftermath. The chaos has subsided. 2 tech priests, accompanied by several lower-ranking menials, have arrived to inspect the wreckage. They move around the destroyed Kataphron, their movements calm and methodical, utterly unfazed by the carnage and the dead guardsmen nearby. Narrator. And what is the fate of a failed machine? Here we see the final callous truth of the servitor's existence. There is no repair for the individual. There is no attempt to understand what went wrong in the mind that broke. To the Adeptus Mechanicus, this is not a fallen soldier to be mourned. It is a piece of equipment to be assessed for salvage. One tech priest scans the plasma culverin, its binharic chatter indicating that the weapon is still functional. The other examines the tracked motive unit, noting that the primary drive is undamaged. They do not look at the face of the servitor, frozen in a silent rictus. That part is irrelevant. The order is given. The menials move in with cutting torches and heavy tools. They do not perform a rite of passage or offer a prayer. They begin to dismantle the corpse with the efficiency of junkyard workers. The weapon system is carefully removed. The armor plating is unbolted. The motive unit is detached. These parts still useful will be cleaned, reconsecrated, and installed on a new biological chassis harvested from a fresh criminal or a vat-grown clone. The ruined torso, the shattered skull, the brain that housed the fatal glitch, all of it is designated as waste biomass. It will be unceremoniously loaded onto a cart destined for the incinerator or the nutrient reclamation vats. There is no rescue. There is no salvation. For a servitor, even its death is not an end. It is merely the final act of being stripped for parts. Narrator. It is a common belief within the Imperium that the fate of a servitor, while grim, is at least a final sterile damnation. A mindless tool, an empty shell, is thought to be beneath the notice of the great and terrible powers that lurk beyond the veil of reality. An empty mind, they reason, offers no purchase for the whispers of the warp. But this, like so much of the Imperium's dogma, is a comforting lie. The void left within a servitor's skull is not a shield. It is an invitation. For in the silent, soulless vessel of a servitor, the entities of the immaterium find a perfect, unsuspecting puppet, and a new, more profound dimension of horror is revealed. There is, it seems, a fate far worse than mindless servitude. The scene is the long, dark corridor of a starship during a warp transit. The walls ripple with unreal energies, and the distant, maddening whispers of demonic entities echo just at the edge of hearing. A lone maintenance servitor trundles down the corridor, its programming compelling it to check atmospheric seals. Its movements are, as always, precise and mechanical. But then it stops. It stands motionless in the middle of the corridor for a full minute, its head tilted, as if listening to a sound no one else can hear. Narrator. The mind of a man is a fortress protected by the walls of faith, reason, and willpower. But the mind of a servitor is a fortress that has been abandoned. Its walls are breached, its sentries slain. It is a quiet, empty space, and the insidious whispers of chaos love nothing more than a quiet space to fester. While the human crew are driven mad by the cacophony of the warp, the servitor's scrubbed brain offers a unique vulnerability. It does not recognize the whispers as a threat. It processes them as stray data bursts, as phantom signals. And slowly, subtly, the corruption takes root. The servitor begins to deviate from its programming in small, almost unnoticeable ways. It might trace a 7-pointed star in the dust with its manipulator claw. Its vox emitter might hiss a single guttural word in a language that has not been heard for millennia. It might turn its optical sensors to a dark corner, tracking the movement of something that is not there. It is becoming a conduit, a sleeper agent for the madness that lies outside. The scene violently shifts to a hellish landscape on a demon world. The ground is a carpet of flesh and screaming faces, the sky a bruised purple. Here the forces of the Chaos Space Marines and the Dark Mechanicum are at work. A captured Imperial servitor is chained to an altar of twisted metal. Narrator. What begins as a whisper for some becomes a screaming physical transformation for others. For the heretical artisans of the Dark Mechanicum, a servitor is not just a tool, but a perfect medium for their unholy creations. They see the imperial practice of servitorization not as a necessary evil, but as a starting point, a crude and unimaginative first step. They take the empty vessels created by their loyalist cousins, and with gleeful sadism fill them with the very energies of chaos itself. A hulking warp-smith, his armor covered in chaotic symbols, approaches the chained servitor. He holds a syringe filled with a bubbling, iridescent substance, the Obliterator virus. Narrator. They infect them with technoviruses like the Obliterator curse, a demonic plague that shatters the boundaries between flesh machine and weapon. The servitor's body becomes a canvas for uncontrolled cancerous growth. Metal and flesh merge and flow like wax, its arms momentarily morphing into plasma cannons, then into writhing tentacles, then back into claws of jagged bone. It is a constant agonizing state of flux, its simple brain now overloaded with the horrifying blueprint of every weapon it can imagine. It is no longer a tool with one function, but a monster of infinite, chaotic potential. The scene culminates in the creation of a demon engine. The servitor's torso is forcibly grafted into the chassis of a walking tank. A ritual is performed, and a screaming, formless entity from the warp is summoned and bound within the servitor's body. The machine lurches to life, its metal plates glowing with internal fire, a demonic face momentarily appearing in the smoke from its exhausts. Narrator. This is the final, most obscene desecration, the demon engine. Here the servitor becomes a prison, its body, the anchor that binds a malevolent warp entity to the material universe. The faint, echoing ghost of the person that was is now trapped in an eternal cage with a raging sentient monster. The demon pilots the machine, but it is the servitor's sole remnant that feels the pain that provides the spark of life and the anchor of reality. Its agony is the fuel that powers the machine. Its terror is a sweet offering to the ruinous powers. The Imperium hollowed out its mind and enslaved its body, but chaos goes one step further. It takes that empty house, fills it with a monster, and sets it on fire, ensuring that the last dying embers of the original soul are fated to an eternity of conscious, unimaginable torment. Narrator. In the face of such absolute damnation, a final desperate question arises. Is there any hope for the soul trapped within the shell, for the ghost in the machine that occasionally glimpses its own hell? Can there be any form of salvation? Can the grace of the God Emperor penetrate the layers of steel programming and surgical trauma to reach the last embers of a spirit? Is there a path back to the light for those who have been so utterly cast into darkness? For an answer, we must turn to the great spiritual authority of the Imperium, the ecclesiarchy itself. And its answer is as unwavering as it is merciless. The scene is a vast cathedral light streaming through stained glass windows, depicting saints and martyrs. A congregation of the faithful listens as a high-ranking confessor delivers a sermon, his voice echoing through the vaulted space. His words are filled with fire and brimstone. Narrator. The position of the Imperial Creed is absolute. The soul is a sacred gift from the Emperor, a reflection of his own divine light. The process of servitorization, the forcible scouring of the mind, and the violation of the holy human form is an act of profound spiritual desecration. It is a man-made damnation. The priests preach that once an individual undergoes this procedure, their soul is irrevocably tainted, shattered, or even extinguished. They are considered the unsouled spiritually dead, their connection to the Emperor's light permanently severed. Their endless labor is not a path to redemption. It is merely a penance enacted upon the flesh, for their spirit is already considered lost. They are beyond prayer, beyond salvation, beyond the grace of the Emperor. They are empty things, and the Emperor's light does not shine on a vacuum. In the eyes of the Church, to become a servitor is to forfeit one's soul for all eternity. There is no coming back. The grand cathedral fades, replaced by the grim, rain-slicked ruins of a war-torn city. A lone space marine of a forgotten chapter, his armor scarred and pitted, stands over the twitching form of a Medici servitor. The servitor has been damaged in the fighting, its lower body crushed. It lies on its back, its multi-jointed surgical arms spasming, one of them repeatedly making a soft patting motion in the air, a phantom gesture of comfort directed at nothing. A low, garbled keen escapes its vox emitter, a sound of pure distress. Narrator. The dogma is clear, but dogma is for priests in cathedrals. On the battlefields and in the dark corners of the Imperium, a different kind of question is sometimes asked. What is the proper response to a suffering it is forbidden to acknowledge? This Space Marine, a veteran of 100 campaigns, sees the damaged servitor. He recognizes the signs, the repetitive, unprogrammed gesture, the distress call emanating from the Vox, as a catastrophic system failure. A ghost in the machine, thrashing in its death throes. His duty would be to ignore it and move on. It is a broken tool. Or perhaps to salvage its still functioning arms for the chapter's tech marines. The Space Marine watches the twitching servitor for a long moment, his helmet's impassive face giving away nothing of his thoughts. The servitor's keening sound is pitiful, a sound of an animal caught in a trap. He slowly raises his bolt pistol. The weapon is massive, a tool for killing monsters and heretics. Narrator. But what if in that moment he sees not a machine, but a flicker of a soul in agony? What if he sees a reflection of the endless suffering that underpins his own brutal existence? To end its existence would be an act of mercy. A final gentle release for a spirit trapped in an unbreakable prison. A kindness. But is it, or is it simply the pragmatic act of silencing a distracting noise? Is he putting a tortured creature out of its misery, or is he merely cleaning up a piece of faulty equipment? In a universe without pity, can a truly merciful act even exist? He places the barrel of the bolt pistol against the servitor's cranium. The keening stops, as if in anticipation. He pauses. Narrator. This is the ultimate question. Is this an act of salvation, a final blessing bestowed by a weary warrior? Or is it simply the ultimate expression of the Imperium's own cold logic, that which is broken beyond repair must be eliminated? He pulls the trigger. The explosive report is deafeningly final. The servitor's head vanishes in a burst of gore and shattered metal. Its limbs fall still. The Space Marine stands over the quieted form for a moment, then turns and walks away into the rain. His own private answer forever locked behind the emotionless lenses of his helmet. Narrator. For the vast majority of servitors, termination is the end. A broken tool is discarded, its components recycled, its biomass rendered down. There is no marker, no memory, no legacy. It is a null equation, an existence that subtracts itself from the universe, leaving nothing behind. But for a select, unusual few, a strange form of existence can continue even after the function has ceased. These are not legacies of a person, for the person is long dead. They are the bizarre afterlives of a tool, echoes of service that persist in forms both sanctified and profane, providing a final twisted commentary on the Imperium's relationship with life, death, and duty. The scene is a quiet, sacred workshop on a forge world, a place that is half laboratory, half chapel. A tech priest robed in crimson is carefully working on a human skull resting on a velvet cushion. He is not desecrating it. He is adorning it. With reverent hands, he inscribes tiny lines of Binharic prayer onto the bone and polishes the imperial aquila that has been carefully branded on its forehead. This is the skull of a highly decorated imperial servant, one who bequeathed his remains to the service of the Omnisire. Narrator. We return to the servo skull, the most coveted and misunderstood of these legacies. Why is one skull discarded while another is exalted? The answer lies in the power of symbolism. The skulls chosen for this honor belonged to individuals whose loyalty was so absolute, whose faith so unwavering, that their very being became a symbol of imperial virtue. To allow such a potent symbol to simply rot away is seen as a waste. And so the cult Mechanicus offers this path to eternal service. The transformation is a holy ritual. The skull is treated as a sacred relic, carefully prepared and sanctified. It is not just a drone being built, it is a monument being created. By giving it the gift of flight and function, the Imperium ensures that the symbol of this great servant continues its work. The skull becomes a physical manifestation of the idea that duty is eternal. It is a powerful piece of propaganda, a message to the living, that if their devotion is pure enough, their service can literally transcend the grave. The dead man's thoughts and memories are irrelevant. It is his loyalty embodied in the bone of his skull that has given this strange mechanical immortality. It is a legacy not of the man, but of his obedience. The scene shifts to a stark, quiet data archive. A different tech priest, this one, a low-ranking data analyst, stares at a large screen filled with cascading lines of code and numbers. He is reviewing the complete operational log of a Factorum servitor that was recently decommissioned after 2 centuries of continuous service. Narrator. But not all legacies are so steeped in faith. Some are far colder, far emptier. For certain servitors, especially those in logistical or industrial roles, their entire operational history is recorded stored in vast databanks for efficiency analysis. Here a different kind of ghost is found, the ghost in the data. The tech priest is not looking for a soul. He is looking for patterns for ways to optimize the performance of the next generation of servitors. But what he is seeing, whether he recognizes it or not, is the complete chronicle of a life. A life reduced to a barren digital footprint. The camera shows the screen. The log is an endless repeating loop of simple commands and status updates. Cycle 81 442109 initiated. Task lift ingot 9 gamma. Action complete. Motor stress nominal. Recharge cycle 408812 initiated. The log spans 200 years, and every entry is almost identical to the last. There are no deviations, no personal notes, no emotions. It is the diary of a piston, the biography of a cog. Narrator. This is the servitor's other legacy. Not a holy relic, but a string of code. A testament not to faith, but to function. The sum total of a human lifespan, all its lost potential for love, joy, anger, and discovery, has been converted into this. A sterile, meaningless stream of data, a record of millions of identical movements, a life story with only one word repeated, ad infinitum obey. The tech priest will extract the useful data on power consumption and motor wear, and then he will delete the file. And with that single keystroke, the last faint digital echo of the man who was will be erased from the universe forever, a final quiet death in a forgotten corner of a database. Narrator. We have journeyed through the abattoirs of imperial justice, witnessed the unholy surgery of the soul, and chronicled the myriad hells of eternal servitude. We have seen the ghosts in the machine and questioned the nature of salvation in a godless universe. And now, at the end of this grim pilgrimage, a final terrible truth reveals itself. The servitor is not merely a product of the Imperium. It is not an anomaly or a regrettable necessity. The servitor is the Imperium itself rendered in miniature. It is the perfect, horrifying metaphor for the entire state of mankind in the 41st millennium. To understand the servitor is to understand the empire it serves. The visuals become a grand, sweeping montage, intercutting images of a single labor servitor, with vast galactic-scale images of the Imperium. A close-up of a cable being sutured into a servitor's spine is matched with an image of a starship docking with a massive orbital station. The vacant eyes of a servitor are cross-faded with the dead black eye lenses of the Golden Throne on Terra. Narrator. Consider the similarities. The Imperium, like the servitor, is an ancient broken thing, a relic of a golden age whose original purpose has been all but forgotten. It is a colossal machine that runs on the dead and the dying. The Astronomicon, the very beacon that allows for interstellar travel, is powered by the daily sacrifice of 1,000 psychers, their souls burned out to fuel the light. The High Lords of Terra rule from a palace built on the bones of 1,000,000 forgotten heroes. The entire edifice is kept functioning not by innovation or hope, but by the relentless, unthinking repetition of ancient rituals and dogmas it no longer truly understands. It is a walking corpse animated by the sheer stubborn refusal to die and it fuels its continued existence by consuming its own children. Is this not the very definition of a servitor, a body once human, now kept moving by cold, hard programming, its own life force, a resource to be expended until nothing is left? The montage continues, now showing images of immense sacrifice, billions of Imperial guardsmen charging into certain death factory workers, collapsing from exhaustion on assembly lines, entire populations tithed into servitude. These images are intercut with a single servitor mindlessly performing its task, oblivious to the greater picture. Narrator. And what of this immense, unending sacrifice? The trillions of lives fed into the meat grinder, the trillions of souls hollowed out to become tools. What has it all achieved? Does it forge a brighter future? Does it bring humanity closer to its manifest destiny of ruling the stars? The terrible secret truth of the Imperium is that this sacrifice achieves nothing but survival. It does not lead to progress, it only prevents collapse. The endless toil of the labor servitor does not build a utopia. It merely produces the weapons needed to fight the next hopeless war. The mindless devotion of the battle servitor does not win victory. It only staves off defeat for one more day. All of this suffering, all of this horror is expended not for a grand and noble cause, but to simply maintain the crumbling, rotten status quo. It is a sacrifice without meaning, a pyre that burns to generate not light, but only enough heat to survive the encroaching cold for one more night. The servitor endlessly repeating its task with no hope of completion or reward is the perfect symbol for this galactic-scale futility. The montage fades, leaving one final powerful image, a close-up on the face of a servitor, half flesh, half metal. Its eyes are blank, its expression empty. But we, the viewers, now understand the universe of horror that lies behind that emptiness. Narrator. And so we arrive at the fundamental grimdark truth. In the cold, dark future of the 41st millennium, the greatest horror is not death. Death is a release, a mercy. The greatest horror is to be trapped. To have your identity, your freedom, your very soul stolen from you, but to be denied the peace of oblivion. To be forced to exist as a thing, a puppet whose strings are pulled by the dead hands of history and dogma. This is the fate of the servitor, and this is the fate of the Imperium of man, a galactic empire that has lost its soul, that has forgotten the dream of the emperor that once gave it purpose, but is now cursed to fight on, to toil on, to exist, because it is the only thing it is programmed to do. The servitor is not just a symbol of the Imperium. It is its most honest self-portrait. Narrator. And so our journey ends where it began. The great wheel turns, and we find ourselves once more in the cavernous, smoke-choked depths of the Manufactorum on Galthus Prime. The air is still thick with the stench of promethium and ozone. The great cogs still turn with their ponderous, inexorable rhythm, and the silent workforce, the endless tide of flesh and steel, still toils in the flickering, hellish light of the plasma furnaces. Nothing has changed here, and yet everything has changed, for we are no longer ignorant observers. We have walked the path of the damned. We know now the truth that lies behind every blank stare, every mechanical movement. The camera pans slowly across the factory floor, mirroring the opening shots. But this time, the focus is different. The lens lingers on individual servitors. We see the rivet gunner, the ingot lifter, the shell sorter. The movements are the same, but they no longer seem merely mechanical. They seem haunted. Narrator. Before we saw only machines. Now we see a graveyard in motion. We know that the arm lifting that white-hot ingot may have once held a child. We know that the eyes, now cold optical lenses, may have once gazed upon the sunset of a world long lost. We know that the brain piloting this broken body was once a universe of dreams, memories, and love. We have witnessed the cold verdict of the Arbites, felt the surgeon's scalpel on our own soul, and heard the Binharic chant that overwrote a personality with a single brutal command. We have seen the myriad forms this damnation can take, from the soldier on the battlefield to the brain in the jar. The rhythmic percussion of the factory is no longer just the sound of industry. It is the steady, unending beat of a funeral drum for a billion souls. Look at them. Look at the twitching fingers of the scribe, the phantom salute of the gunner, the momentary pause of the laborer. These are not malfunctions in the wiring. They are the faint, desperate death throes of a ghost trapped in the amber of its own flesh. They are the last defiant echoes of a humanity that refuses to be completely, utterly erased. We have stared into the abyss of their creation, and the abyss has shown us a terrible reflection. The Servitor is the ultimate warning, a sermon delivered in scarred tissue and weeping hydraulics. It is a testament to the fundamental truth of this dark millennium, that in a galaxy where there is only war, in an empire that values survival above all else, humanity is not a right. It is a privilege, and it is the first luxury to be discarded. The camera begins a slow, deliberate push-in on a single servitor. It is a simple maintenance construct tasked with lubricating a massive piston. Its face is mostly original, though pale and scarred, its eyes the same dull, vacant orbs as all the others. It performs its task with flawless programmed repetition. Narrator: this is the true face of the Imperium, not the soaring spires of the ecclesiarchy, nor the gilded armor of the Adeptus Custodes. It is this wretched creature, this unholy union of man's sacred form and the machine's cold logic. A being robbed of its past, denied a future, and cursed to an eternal, meaningless present. It is the final product of a system that has sacrificed its own soul to keep its body alive. All the triumphs and tragedies of mankind, all the art, the science, the love, the hate, all of it has led to this. A mindless slave, endlessly oiling the gears of a machine that is slowly, inevitably grinding itself into dust. Can there be a more profound tragedy to be denied not only life, but the dignity of death? To become a tool used and discarded, your only legacy a line of code in a forgotten archive or a skull mounted on a stick. The camera is now in an extreme close-up on the servitor's right eye. It stares unblinking at the piston it is tending. For a long moment there is nothing but the vacant stillness we have come to expect. Then from the corner of the eye, from the tear duct that should be dry and useless, a single black viscous droplet begins to form. It swells, catching the hellish light of the forge. Is it oil a leak from some internal mechanism, a sign of mechanical failure? Or is it a tear, a final impossible distillation of a soul's agony, a drop of grief for a life it cannot remember? Narrator: the drop quivers for a moment on the edge of the eyelid, a tiny dark pearl of ambiguity. Then it falls, tracing a clean black line down the grime on the servitor's cheek. The servitor does not react. Its programming reasserts itself. It blinks once. The movement is mechanical, a simple clearing of its optical sensor. It turns its head and continues its task. The moment, whatever it was, is over. Narrator: in the end, perhaps it does not matter. Tear or oil soul or circuit, it changes nothing. The task continues. The wheel turns. The great, terrible machine of the Imperium endures for one more day, powered by the sacrifice of its children. And the galaxy is filled with the sound of its labor. A sound of gears, of pistons, of fire, and of steel. A sound that, if you listen closely enough, in the brief silences between the crash of the hammer and the roar of the furnace, is utterly indistinguishable from the sound of screaming. The camera slowly pulls back, leaving the servitor to its work. It is lost once more in the crowd of thousands, then in the vastness of the manufactorum. The rhythmic, deafening noise of the factory begins to fade slowly, steadily, until all that is left is a profound and absolute silence. A silence made from the extinguished voices of 1 trillion souls. Fade to black.